Everyone. The Liberals are in trouble. I think they're really in trouble. And I know I've been saying that for a few days, and they're scrambling, and it looks like they're kind of ahead of this mess. I think the hammer or the other shoe is about to drop. Or maybe tomorrow afternoon, Friday afternoon. Happy Valentine's Day, by the way, everybody, right? Happy Valentine's Day. So I think the other shoe is going to drop soon. But I think that Miss Wilson-Raybould, her continued silence helps her. It feeds the story a little bit, right? There's nothing new, so people are going to speculate on privilege and what that's going to happen. What does that look like, and etc. That's what I'm going to do today. And because people smarter than me are speculating on it, and I looked at it and thought, wow, yeah, that's maybe a pathway to seeing what's actually going on here. But first, I want to show you how deep the rot goes, right? It's not just Vice Admiral Mark Norman. It's not just SNC Lavalin. Both of those cases go all the way up to the Prime Minister's office or the Office of the Privy Council. Those are big stories. Each one is a big story. The Prime Minister and the Privy Council office have no business being in either of those cases. Those should be arm's length, and they are absolutely not. They've been so politicized. It's dominating our politics news right now, to Justin Trudeau's chagrin. He does not want that. But back 6 months ago, the missing and murdered Indigenous women's inquiry lost its 25th lawyer. Is that crazy? In 2 years, 25 people are saying, nope, not doing it. You guys are nuts. I quit. I wonder why that is. So here is the Aptn National News article about that. Posted July 2nd, 2018, and it says, Métis lawyer resigns from the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls national inquiry. The national inquiry into the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls has been hit with another resignation. Breen Ouellette, a Métis lawyer working for the inquiry in Vancouver, announced his departure via Twitter. More details in the coming days. Ouellette posted June 30th on the social media site with a link to a one-page statement. Ouellette said he worked for the inquiry from April 3rd, 2017 to June 21st, 2018. In the letter, he accuses the federal government of undermining the independence and impartiality of the 2-year inquiry it established in 2016. I have experienced a serious loss of confidence in the national inquiry, he writes. I cannot remain part of a process which is speeding toward failure. The resignation brings to nearly 25 the number of people that have quit or been forced out of the process tasked with examining the causes of ongoing violence against Indigenous women and girls. Ouellette hints he has more to say, but he has to be careful not to disclose confidential information. One of the 4 remaining commissioners, Michael Audette, only recently returned to help lead the probe, which in May was granted an additional 6 months. Audette took a 2-week break in protest after Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett refused to extend the inquiry by another 2 years and $50 million. Ouellette suggested in the statement, his resignation is related to testimony from, quote, credible witnesses who raised the possibility that improper and illegal foster care apprehensions are driven by the self-interest of government bureaucrats. Wow, that's a big allegation. Back to the article. The inquiry could use its, quote, powers to force government departments to comply with investigations into these allegations, he added. The perpetrators could be identified so the government could stop the misuse of billions of Canadian tax dollars. But the federal government is undermining the important function of the inquiry. Well, that sounds like he wants to name names. I urge the public to demand the commissioners allow me to fully disclose the reasons behind my resignation, he writes. Canadians deserve to know which provinces and territories perpetuate this unnecessary and harmful spending. The inquiry has never commented publicly on its high rate of turnover. Can you imagine wanting to tell people why you quit? Like, I had to quit this thing because it was so bad. It was so bad that I can't tell you how bad it was because I will go to jail, because I have a gag order on me, because I'm not allowed to tell you confidential information, and they will throw the book at me if I do. Right? Can you imagine that? All he's asking is to be able to tell the truth. Wild. That's Canada 2019. Thank you, Justin Trudeau. And that thank you is very sarcastic. Here's legaltree.ca, and this is legaltree.ca is a growing resource for lawyers. So it's by no means gospel, but it says the Supreme Court of Canada on solicitor-client privilege, what every practitioner needs to know. And a friend of mine found this and sent me the link, and thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I found it very interesting. Section 23 deals with the exceptions to privilege. And so I wanted to show you that because it's important. The privilege does not extend to communications, 1, where legal advice is not sought or offered, 2, where they are not intended to be confidential, or 3, they have the purposes of furthering unlawful conduct. Interesting, right? And I'm going to scroll down. Here's the crime exception. Another recognized exception is for criminal communications. The privilege will not protect communications that are criminal in themselves or that are intended to obtain legal advice to facilitate the committing of a crime. That is something that this is something that is known as future crimes and fraud exception. The theory behind this exception is that communication in furtherance of a criminal purpose does not come into the ordinary scope of professional employment. It is immaterial whether the lawyer is an unwitting dupe or knowing participant in a criminal scheme. However, this exception applies only when the client is knowingly pursuing a criminal purpose. Good faith consultations with lawyers by their clients who are uncertain about legal implications of a proposed course of action are entitled to be protected by privilege, even if that action should later be held to be improper, or could later be held to be improper. No, it says should. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. I don't necessarily think the implications are that Mr. Trudeau was acting in a criminal way necessarily here, other than the fact that he was pressuring her, right? Like, I don't think he was, I suppose that's criminal. So is that protected? I'm not sure. I don't know. But there are other theories, and not my theories, about whether or not we'll hear about this. And Mr. Peter Mackay thinks that Trudeau's already waived his privilege, and I'll show you that. So it's Darcy Barker Money, Darcy Barker Money saying former Attorney General Peter Mackay says Trudeau has already waived privilege in SNC Lavalin scandal. And here's the Toronto Star article, and we will go through it. By opening his mouth on Monday, former Attorney General Peter Mackay says Justin Trudeau has already waived any privilege that stops Jody Wilson-Raybould from saying whether she was pressured to interfere in the criminal case. The PM may have stepped in it, frankly. Mackay, a former Conservative minister and now partner at Barker and McKenzie LLP, told iPolitics Tuesday. Wilson-Raybould resigned Tuesday after amid a growing scandal around allegations the Prime Minister's office tried to pressure her to interfere in the SNC Lavalin's case in Quebec. Last week, the Globe and Mail reported that former Justice Minister Wilson-Raybould was pressured to force the Public Prosecution Service of Canada to strike a deal with the engineering and construction giant that would see it avoid a criminal trial while not admitting any criminal wrongdoing. In its story, the Globe said Wilson-Raybould resisted that pressure. The prosecution is proceeding with a trial, but SNC Lavalin is appealing that decision in court. I didn't know that. I found that funny. Not funny. I found that very brazen, you know? Like, we just got our Attorney General in place, and you're trying to say that we can't use this perfectly crafted legal loophole that the Liberal government put in place for us? Come on, appeal it right the way to the Supreme Court. Does Justin Trudeau get to choose those guys too? No? Oh, They're liberal. They're largely liberal judges on the Supreme Court, but Harper put a lot of them on there. So kind of funny. Interesting how that works. Anyway, until now, the former Justice Minister has said she can't speak to allegations because of solicitor-client privilege, and that the government holds in her discussions with her. But Mackay said that the issue is moot because Trudeau disclosed part of a conversation he had with her about SNC Lavalin. Quote, she confirmed for me a conversation we had this fall where I told her directly that any decisions on matters involving the Director of Public Prosecutions were hers alone, Trudeau said on Monday in Vancouver. Mackay said that amounts to, quote, an implied waiver, and it should allow Wilson-Raybould to at least answer the question of whether she was pressured to intervene. Implied waiving is triggered, quote, when you start to release dribs and drabs of only partial recollections of a conversation. He said, if you open it up, then that is implied waiving of privilege. The executive director of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, Michael Brandt, agreed with that assessment. You can't have your cake and eat it too, Brandt said. You can't share the parts of the solicitor-client confidential information that make you look good and then leave out the parts that make you look bad. The privilege is held by the client and lost as soon as he or she discloses part of the conversation. Brian is the former Liberal Attorney General of Ontario. Either the communications are entirely privileged or they're not privileged. It's one or the other, he said. Once you remove privilege from part of a conversation, the entirety of the conversation is no longer privileged. Hey, do you guys want to hear Justin Trudeau answer a question? Because I sure do. Here we go.
Prime Minister, you said that you told Jody Wilson-Raybould that any decision on matters of the Director of Public Prosecutions were hers alone to make. So did you remove her as Justice Minister because she didn't make the decision that you wanted her to make on SNC Lavalin?
Jody Wilson-Raybould and I had a conversation in September in which I emphasized to her that the decision on the decisions she makes as Attorney General, particularly in this matter, are her decision, and I was not directing or pressuring her. If she felt that she had received pressure, it was her obligation, her responsibility to come to talk to me, and she did not do that in the fall. And she continued to choose to serve in this government as Veterans Affairs Minister when I made a cabinet shuffle.
And so he has talked about part of the conversation, thereby waiving the privilege of the rest of the conversation. Would now the person who he's trying to throw under the bus by implying that she should have come to him with her concerns? Why didn't you come and talk to me, Jody? Why did you leave me, Jody? It doesn't work like that, Prime Minister. You can't, it just doesn't work like that. So I find it very interesting. So I said at the top, I think that Ms. Wilson-Raybould is using this time, one, to further implicate the government. The longer she stays silent and doesn't come out and say, no, I wasn't pressured, this was a totally, we're lockstep, everything's fine, no problems. The longer she doesn't say that, the worse it looks for the government, because she has to say something, right? You saw yesterday in my second video, the Liberals saying, Jody can talk to the public whenever she wants. She just doesn't have to be in front of the public or in front of the Judiciary Committee. She can just talk away, talk. Of course, thinking that the privilege still existed and she wouldn't be able to speak to anything of note or anything that matters, right? But it looks like she can't. So I think she's going to burn today and she's going to let tomorrow linger. Maybe tomorrow afternoon, 2:30, I would say she shows up on the front steps with her lawyer and she crosses the floor, and Andrew Scheer, and she crosses the floor while speaking the other side of this conversation that Mr. Trudeau just waived his privilege on for a second time in this link right here. Right? By speaking about the conversation, he waives the privilege that he was using as his trump card. Interesting. Maybe not. Maybe I've misunderstood this. Maybe I'm wrong and Miss Wilson-Raybould comes out and says, everything's fine. I've just been sick and I haven't been watching the news and I didn't realize this was as big a deal. Yeah, everything was above board. No pressure. Whatever. Maybe that happens. Maybe it does. I could see that happening, and then we'll rocket into October with one more Liberal ethics scandal under his belt. 5 ethics violations potentially for Mr. Trudeau. 4 already, 1 impending. Right? Maybe that's what happens. But maybe we have some fireworks before spring. Who knows? Who knows? All we need is 12 ministers to cross the floor, and we've got a couple of disaffected Liberals already. Maybe more. Who knows? We can be hopeful. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Happy Valentine's Day. Eat a bit of chocolate. Thanks for watching.